Transportation, Infrastructure, Public Safety will come to order. Alyssa, please call the roll.
Senators Fitzwater,
Here.
Schnelltein, Brown, Gregory, Shore, Washington, Weber.
Quorum being established, we'll go into the hearing. We are going to begin with Senator Mosley's bill. Senator Mosley in the room. She's on her way. We're going to go to Senator May. I think she's in the room. Senator May, go ahead when you're ready on Senate Bill 944.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I am Senator Carla May, representing the 4th Senatorial District for the record. I present to you today Senate Bill 944 for your consideration. Current law governing the sheriff's attorney salary has remained largely unchanged for 36 years. The existing statute, 57.540, was passed in 1990. The statute no longer reflects the complexity of modern legal work, the volume of litigation and compliance demands, and the professional expectations placed on government attorneys today. Senate Bill 944 updates Section 57.540 to reflect current realities, not past conditions. When the salary range was originally established, the purchasing power of the dollar was significantly higher. Inflation has eroded the real value of the compensation over time. This bill corrects that imbalance by adjusting the salary range to a level that reflects today's economic conditions. This bill also prevents the position from being undervalued simply due to outdated statute language. Attorneys serving sheriffs and law enforcement agencies across Missouri are often compensated at higher and more competitive rates. Senate Bill 944 ensures the City of St. Louis is comparable with other jurisdictions and able to seek and retain experienced legal professions. This is a matter of fairness and parity, not expansion. The title of the sheriff's attorney comes with many responsibilities, such as handling high-risk legal exposure for the city, representing the sheriff in court, and advising on civil and constitutional matters. We want to ensure that their compensation matches their responsibilities. The current compensation of the role has caused turnover, increasing loss in legal continuity, and most importantly, the qualified attorneys the city desperately needs may decide to go elsewhere that compensates them properly. We have seen this happen with police officers leave the City of St. Louis for other counties due to the police department not being able to adequately compensate them. We do not want to make this mistake twice. Senate Bill 944 creates a salary range flexible enough to attract and retain skilled attorneys while maintaining fiscal responsibility. The bill does not mandate a fixed salary. It establishes a reasonable minimum and maximum range, $15,000 being the lowest, $75,000 being the highest. Compensation remains subject to oversight and budgetary discretion and will still be paid from existing sheriff funding streams. This will come at no cost to the state. This ensures responsible stewardship of public funds while allowing practical flexibility. Effective law enforcement depends on sound legal counsel. Adequate compensation helps ensure compliance with state and federal law, better decision-making within the sheriff's office, and a reduction in litigation risk. Senate Bill 944 is ultimately, I'm doing a filibuster, protecting the integrity of the public safety operations within our courts. This bill is not about excess. It's about equity, modernization, and responsibility. SB 944 ensures the City of St. Louis can retain competent legal counsel, reflect inflationary realities, and remain competitive with similar jurisdictions across Missouri, all while safeguarding taxpayer dollars. Because there is no fiscal note on this bill, and this is simply not a controversial topic, we're asking that this bill go consent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for allowing me to present this bill today.
Thank you, Senator.
I'm open for any questions.
I do have a question.
Sure.
To prevent having to some St. Louis senator come back before us in 20 years and say, hey, this is hitting a cap again, is there a way to manage this so that it increases on some level that framework every year to ensure that, like, you don't have to keep coming back to the legislature and say this is the minimum and maximum?
Absolutely, because right now it's just a flat 15,000, which is absurd. If
Yeah,
you
and
even look at the smallest counties in our state, their minimum is 50,000 for the employees in the whole office.
And I think more
It's
on
crazy.
the high end, 75,000 for a lawyer. You know, right now may be a really good wage, but in the way those things work, you know, it may not be that high soon. So is there a way to adjust that over time automatically? Is that, have you seen
If-
that happen? Like, is
If
there
you
a
have
way-
a suggestion, I'm open to
just
it.
so we're you know
Right.
we're saying somebody from St. Louis in 20 years is going to come back and say, all right, we need to lift this again because it's, you know, the wages don't match what the market demands.
Absolutely. I'm just looking for some range of parity. So, I mean, we can talk to maybe legal and find out if there's a way to make it based on, I don't know.
Would
If
your
we
office
make it
mind
based
working
on
just with
inflation
research
or
and say, hey,
compensation?
is there
Yeah.
some framework for doing this to make sure that somebody else doesn't have to come back later, just for the city's sake?
Yeah.
And if not, then we'll move it the way you request it. If so,
Yeah.
then we'll maybe amend it a little bit to ensure that it moves up as needed.
Yes, that's fine with me. Yes.
Questions for the senator? Seeing none. Thank you, Senator. Anybody here to testify in favor of the bill? Proceed when you're ready. Please, for our purposes too, please fill out witness form. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Ron Berry. I'm a registered lobbyist today here on behalf of the Office of St. Louis Sheriff, and we just want to go on record in support of the bill. My suggestion might be that you allow as it's currently set, it's the judges within the court system that do most of the hiring and the establishment of the pay schedule. So maybe that could be the way you could establish that second piece that you're wanting for the future reference on the salary.
Questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Further witnesses in favor? Seeing none, anybody opposed? Seeing none, anybody for informational purposes? That'll conclude the hearing. Thank you, Senator. The next up will be Senator Mosley on Senate Bill 965. Senator Mosley, make it to the, oh, there she is.
Greetings. I am Senator Mosley of the 13th Senatorial District. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to have this hearing today. I will be presenting SB 965. This is the CTF alert, which stands for Christian Taylor Ferguson. The summary of the bill is this act creates the Christian Taylor Ferguson Medical Alert System to aid in identifying and locating a missing endangered person defined as a person including a child who is missing under unexplained, involuntary, or suspicious circumstances and who is believed to be in danger because of a medical condition that requires immediate care, medication, or treatment. The CTF medical alert system shall be set up and maintained in a manner similar to the Amber Alert system. The Department of Public Safety shall develop regions to provide the system and to coordinate local law enforcement agencies and public commercial television and radio broadcasters. The department shall also administer rules to implement the provision of this act. And I do have a witness that has a personal life story that goes along with this bill, who is actually the mother of Christian Taylor Ferguson. And I'll answer any questions as well.
Any questions for the senator? Seeing none. Anybody here to testify in favor of the bill? Go ahead and hop up if you would. Make sure the light's on that microphone there. so we can hear you. And then if you have a witness form, leave it for our records too, please. Perfect. Thank you.
Greetings. Thank you for your service and for being in a powerful position to bring life, hopefully, to this bill. I feel that it is imperative that we pass this because my son, if we had a bill like this alert in place, then it could have saved the life of my son. You know, I just feel like there's a plethora of things, of course, that could have saved his life since so many things transpired, if you know anything about the Christian Taylor Ferguson story. But I feel like my son pretty much died so others can live, you know, even though I wish that he would not have passed. But in his memory, I feel like that if this bill is passed, or when this bill is passed, that it will sustain the lives of other individuals, even if they are on dialysis or have other types of situations that require life-saving medications or life-sustaining medications to keep them alive. I said so much before, and I don't know if I need to say anything more, but I'm definitely open for questions. But I do know that it is imperative that we all do what's in the best interest of people, period. And passing this legislation will do that, just that.
Well, I have a couple questions. One, it's not a question necessarily, but I can't imagine losing a child, so thanks for having the strength to come here and talk about it. Secondly, you know, would love to hear a little bit more about the story, if you don't
Okay.
mind.
Yes,
if
I'd
you
love to
can.
tell you.
I don't want to make it harder for you than it has to be, but it
No.
would help as we consider this,
Yes.
how a system would have impacted your son's life.
Okay. Well, I couldn't find my button because my mother, I went to Barnes Jewish Hospital because my mother's there with a heartbeat of 28 beats per minute. So I hope she lives to see this pass. But I made this out of memory where I started making jewelry when I was pregnant with Christian. And these are like displaced beads, I guess I could say. And I just made a beautiful bracelet that could match just about anything. The bracelet is as old as Christian, probably a little bit older than Christian. And that's the reason why I bring it and I wear it, because I do it in his memory. I never thought that I would be in this position, but on Wednesday, it was a Wednesday, June 11, 2003, the father, DeJuan Tyrell Ferguson, staged the disappearance of my missing, murdered son, Christian Taylor Ferguson. I hope that you all will Google it. Court TV followed it very well, and a lot of times I find myself looking at it, trying to see things that I could not really ingest while I was in the court, because it was hard for me to be a witness and also talk about such a tragedy that happened personally to me, my missing angel. And but I just like to go over it and go over his videos. I find myself trying to go back in time to reclaim some things that should never have been taken away from me by the father, DeJuan Tyrell Ferguson, who's now in jail for murdering my son. He deprived him of his essential medications. And on many occasions, Cardinal Glennon Children's Hospital called me, like after he wrongfully took my children from me without proving me unsuitable, unfit, or unable. He never proved any of those things. They never even said I was. They just told me, the GAL, guardian ad litem, told me, his name is Nathan S. Cohen. He told me in Judge Thomas J. Frawley's court, 22nd jurisdiction at the time, he told me that he's going to just say that DeJuan is the better parent, and he didn't care about my witnesses. So a lot of people wonder why I say conspiracy, and there's a lot of things that were just said and done, and I'm working on my documentary, and those things will come out in time. But knowing that under those circumstances that my child was intentionally put in harm's way, in the care or in the custody, because there was no care at all, of the father, who eventually caused my son to go into a coma around the Martin Luther King holiday. Actually, it was January the 16th, 2001. My son went in a coma. It took him too long to call the paramedics. I mean, if you look at the medical records, and he lived right down the street from Cardinal Glen. And I mean, I ran track. I'm not in that condition right now to run up the block, but he could have just run up the block with my son. And plus, there was a fire station right around the corner. He and I both were trained by the guardian ad litem. I mean, not the guardian ad litem, but the geneticist, Dr. Dorothy K. Grange, to look out for lethargy, glassy eyes, different things, so that we would know when Christian was having what they call the ammonemic crisis. And so basically that's just when ammonia builds up in your blood. So Christian was born with a rare genetic disorder called citrullinemia, and the ammonia would rise in his blood because it lacked another enzyme that kind of completed the cycle. So since he couldn't produce arginine, they gave him a medication called L-arginine, and that kind of kept him stable. He also was on some other medications. But when Cardinal Glennon is calling me, when they took my children wrongfully and put them in his care, and they're asking me, the best parent, to bring medication to the hospital because they don't even have it because it comes from out of the country, then that I'm just saying that so that you can know how critical it was, and because those are the facts. So Cardinal Glennon didn't even have medicine on hand. And if I didn't have the medicine at the time, which I gave all to them, then my son probably would have died a long, long time ago. But that's just to show you how critical this medication was, that they had to ship it in. And without it, my son could die within 24 to 48 hours. And I feel like, and that's one reason why I feel like this bill is so important, because a person with my son's type of life-threatening condition does not have time for someone to deem that it's necessary for an alert to go out like, you know, there is a wonderful alert out right now in memory of someone else, Amber. But it does give the police a lot of discretion, and we don't need that kind of discretion. We don't need the police to say, we think that we need an Amber alert. We need to know that we need a CTF medical alerts. That's the reason why. So I'm grateful that will help. Say that has helped, the Amber has helped, but the CTF alert goes further than that to help people with medical conditions, because a lot of people don't think about those people until it's their family members. I can go on and tell you some more if you have any questions about anything else.
Any further questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for your questions.
Yeah. Anybody else here to testify in favor of the bill?
Hello. So my name is Maria Miller. I am just briefly coming to say I testify in favor of the bill. I met Theta back in 2015, and as you said, it's a lot to lose a child. It's totally different when you continue to fight and you continue to stand for something that you know is right. So in my time at knowing Theta, we kind of started out advocating for things, and I watched her over the last 10 years never lose her hope, never lose her faith. But what really sticks out is she's doing this bill. Christian is no longer with us, but she's doing this bill for not just Christian, for others through her lived experience. And the beauty of it is, as she said, his life living on through this to save others. So that's why I totally support the bill, along with her work and digging down and fighting for her son's case when nobody believed what she was saying. She knew what she was saying, and she believed in herself enough to fight for that and continue to stand and to be here with the support of Senator Mosley for this bill.
Thank you for testimony. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Anybody else here to testify in favor of the bill? Anybody in opposition to the bill? Anybody for informational purposes only? Seeing none, that'll conclude the hearing. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you all.
The next bill is Senator Brattin, Senate Bill 858.
Mr. Chair, are you going every other?
I'm sorry.
Every other or all the for and all the against?
I'm sorry, what?
Are you going every other or all the for and all the against?
We'll, I don't know. Haven't decided yet. I'll let you know. I'll think about it.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Senator Rick Brattin, 31st Senate District, Cass, Bates, and Johnson County. Bringing forth before you Senate Bill 858. This is SEPA 2.0. I know this committee has heard this bill in its an original format, and with this new iteration, after the Eighth Circuit, this was challenged. We passed this. We spent a lot of sweat equity and capital on Second Amendment Preservation Act to get through the process and the governor signing it. And it was challenged, went through the Eighth Circuit, and they did find it to be unconstitutional. But in their opinion as to why they ruled in such a manner, they spelled out what their problems were in explicit detail. And it necessarily wasn't the mechanism, the enforcement, or really the impetus behind the anti-commandeering doctrine that it really truly is. They just found issue with how granular in the prohibitions of what law enforcement and how they can aid and come alongside federal agents in the gun confiscation or any sort of federal gun confiscation laws. So the bill before you, I know it looks like it's all new language, but if you look to the back of it, you'll see there's several pages of deleted. It's all blacked out. What they wanted to do is move that from the old section, and they moved it into the new section. So it looks like it's all new language, and it's not. I can go over just briefly. I know we've got a lot of testimony against, and I know we have caucus, so I'll make it as brief as I possibly can. But if you turn to, let me see, page 4. If you go to section, it's at the bottom paragraph, section 1.451. This is the real true nuts and bolts of why the courts ruled that they did, is because it really spelled out exactly what officers in Missouri could not do. So this basically just broadened the terminology to make sure it fell in line with what the courts had ruled. So that paragraph of that 1451 down to the page 5 to line 9, it was just revised to broaden the scope of that our law enforcement isn't going to aid and abet and gun confiscation. So that was that. There's a civil penalty of $50,000 that remains. The hiring practices of those who have knowingly aided in gun confiscation and the hiring practices, that's always been contentious, but that is there, and I believe it's rightfully so. Needs to be there. If we have officers that are willing to circumvent the oath that they take in protecting constitutional rights, but instead are infringing upon them, we don't need to be hiring officers. I don't care how willing they are to serve in that capacity. Now, there is a provision on page 7. I know there's a lot of pushback on military, because let's be real, I served in the military, so did Senator Weber. There are already gun-free zones in our military bases. You're not allowed unless you have explicit permission. It's an onerous process in terms of even having. A lot of people don't know that you're not able to unless you go to the armory and they literally issue it out to you. But this puts in a buffer in ensuring that we're able to hire military MPs or so on and so forth. This does not apply to felons, so we're protecting law-abiding citizens' Second Amendment rights. So if they're felons, they already should not have firearms, can be fully and totally taken and apprehended and charged and put away as they rightfully should. Same with illegals. They have no rights to own firearms and should be prosecuted accordingly. And then I'll try to get to the last provision. This is probably where you're going to hear the most, where this is impeding and mutual aid and a capability to come alongside our federal partners. But when we're talking about federal prosecutions against persons, where they're committing felonies of crimes against other persons, armed robbery, so on and so forth, this does nothing to impede them from having task force in terms of actual crimes with firearms, and they can work with one another. Same with narcotics and federal felonies in terms of distribution and working on those sorts of task force. I know there's a lot of misinformation out there saying that this just completely denies the capability of law enforcement and ties their hands where they can't do that. No, this is if they're knowingly going and they're infringing on Second Amendment rights, and we're putting a stop to that. Again, this body spent a ton of sweat, equity, and capital in passing this to protect our Second Amendment rights. And I think it's just our due diligence to remedy and fix the discrepancies that the courts found and make sure that we're protecting those Second Amendment rights. Again, not trying to belabor, or I know we have a lot of people, but I would absolutely be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions for the sponsor? Seeing none.
Thank
So we're going to do 2 minutes for and against for each witness. Please keep it to those 2 minutes. We will shut it down at that point. We have to be out of here by 3:30. So, and we've heard this bill several years in a row, so we kind of know where most people stand on it. A lot of work to be done, obviously, but just if we can keep it, we're going to time 2 minutes. So we'll start with for, and we'll go back and forth for and against. So who's all here for the bill? Can you raise your hand? All right, against? Okay.
Informational?
We'll do that at the end. So let's start with for.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Aaron Dorr on behalf of the Missouri Firearms Coalition. This is probably like our 6th annual SAPA hearing, I think, over the last couple of years, so I'll also go quickly on this. This is SAPA 2.0, as you've all heard already a few minutes ago from Senator Brattin. It restates almost all of what was in SAPA 1.0, and it removes some of the sections the court did not like in the 8th Circuit. That area specifically deals with a specific list of infringements that we had in SAPA 1.0 that's been removed now with a broader section to just clarify we don't want to have Missouri officers be forced to enforce any federal gun control laws. The purpose here is very simple. We don't want to have, as a state, in my opinion, our members' opinion, we don't want to have our officers being compelled to enforce federal gun control laws. White Houses change often, and we don't want to see them have to enforce what the previous White House, for example, was trying to mandate that they be a part of. That's the bill in a nutshell. There's penalties to enforce compliance. We have to do something to make sure that if a department would willfully and knowingly violate SAPA, there's some process to address that. Those penalties are against the agency, not against the individual officer. No officer is going to be sued, let alone criminally charged under the bill before you. And we do clarify a series of carve-outs, I would say, that you should be aware of on the back of the page 7. This bill does not apply to felons. No felon can be covered by this. That's page 7, line 2 through 3. Does not cover or apply to illegals in the state illegally. Page 7, line 4 through 5. It does not stop Missouri from receiving all. I'm going to be clear on this. Missouri can receive all help from the federal government to enforce Missouri laws. That's page 4, line 7 through page 5, line 9. Some may say here in a few moments that we can't use databases, we can't use manpower, we can't use resources. That's clearly not the case. It's right there, page 4, line 7 through page 5, line 9. There's even carve-outs to aid the feds in an enforcement action, even when firearms are involved, if the feds are seeking help to deal with a narcotics situation or violent persons crimes. That's on page 8 as well. I'm probably getting low on time right now, Mr. Chairman, so I'll stop and answer any questions.
Any questions for this witness? Senator Weber, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 questions. I'll try to be brief. First off, could you just sort of specifically outline what current problem you're trying to solve for this legislation? Like, what's the goal? What are you trying to
Yeah, we want to make sure that Missouri is allowed to do what's best for Missouri. We want to make sure that Missouri, that this building, you and your colleagues, when you guys pass laws for Missouri in regards to the Second Amendment, that Missouri cops are enforcing those laws. They coincide with our Missouri state constitution. These officers are paid for by Missouri tax dollars, and the whole goal here is to prevent a future federal administration from basically bypassing your authority, bypassing this building and saying, no, you're going to enforce these federal laws over here. Because those federal laws, when it comes to guns, may not be in keeping with the spirit of what this chamber and this building has passed over the previous decades.
Okay, and my second question, so about less than 2 months ago in Columbia, they did an operation, it was Operation Brightside, and arrested 33 outstanding felony warrants. And, you know, my town has had some crime over the last, like every town, over the last few months. And there was a huge celebration. I mean, everybody in Columbia was very excited about this on all sides of the political spectrum. Everybody was ecstatic. And, I've talked to our police department. I don't know if they're going to testify or not today, but they had shut down their violent crimes task force originally when the original SAPA passed. They reinstituted it once it was thrown out.
Yep.
And my question to you is not whether you think this allows them to have that task force or not. That's not a decision that you make. It's not a decision that I make. It's a decision that my local police department makes, looking at what's best for the officer. So my question is, in terms of a balancing act, if on one hand the goal is to prevent potential abuse, and on the other hand, we have in just one operation 33 felons, outstanding felony warrants that we got taken off the street. Again, the question is not whether you think they can operate under SAPA 2.0. My question is, if they decide that they cannot, to you personally, is that trade-off worth it? Is it worth the potential something might happen in the future versus the inability to go after felons and outstanding warrants in my hometown and throughout the entire state?
Sure. Mr. Chair, thank you for the question, Senator. It's a bit of a false dichotomy. I'm not trying to say you did it on purpose, but it clearly is allowed under the bill. So if a jurisdiction voluntarily decides to go beyond what SAPA compels them to do, I don't know how to help them realize that. The only task force work that is precluded by SAPA is to aid in the seizure of firearms. And they do a fugitive apprehension, high crime, warrant enforcement, narcotics investigations, persons crimes investigations. All of these are allowed under SAPA. So if they voluntarily go beyond that, that's clearly outside of the boundaries of SAPA 1.0 and or SAPA 2.0.
Okay, but again, my question, and I assumed you were going to say that, but my question is, again, you don't decide that, and I don't decide that. Our local police chief and our police department and our sheriff decide that. If they are put in that position and they decide that it is too risky for their department, too risky for their officers, for whatever reason going forward, they're looking at the legal landscape, they don't have confidence in the judiciary, I don't know. But just as a trade-off in policy choices, is that a trade that you're willing to make?
I think it's a false trade, Senator. I'm not going to be able to answer your question the way you want. I don't believe it's a question that's stated fairly because they don't have to make that decision.
Okay. I won't waste anybody else's time. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
All right, in opposition. Go to opposition.
Mr. Chair, I wanted to testify for informational purposes, but with the time limits, I'm afraid to wait that long. For the record, my name is Ron Calzone. I am one of the directors of Missouri First. And a little bit of history, I was the original architect of the Second Amendment Preservation Act. I brought it to the legislature in 2013, brought it to Representative Doug Funderburk and Senator Brian Nieves, and we passed it in 2013. The first time through, we passed it. It was overwhelmingly supported by both the House and the Senate. The Democrat governor vetoed it. The House overrode the veto, and the Senate missed overriding the veto by one vote. I've been with the Second Amendment Preservation Act ever since then, and including 2021. And so it's really hard for me to testify against it. But the only reason I'm testifying against it is that this is not the original Second Amendment Preservation Act. Most of it is. Most of it is, and most of it's very good. I think Mr. Doar did a great job explaining what it was. And I think he answered your question accurately. That's how I would have answered the same question. But the problem is that this, as I think both the senator and Mr. Doar explained, this actually expands the Second Amendment Preservation Act. It was only relating to firearms restrictions originally, only infringements on the right to keep bear arms. This bill will be effective against any federal firearm law. And so I'm afraid that might result in unintended consequences. Last year's bill did too. This bill addresses that in part, and it does make some improvements over last year's bill, but it still has the fatal flaw in that it will rely. So, for instance, the Congress right now is looking at a National Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act, and I'm afraid this might have unintended consequences for that. I also want to point out, since I'm about out of time, they took some of my suggestions. They have this for sole purpose phrase in the title, which does partly limit what can happen to the bill, but it also could be used against it, because the sole purpose of this bill is not just to reenact the original Second Amendment Preservation Act, because it expands it. So it might actually be violating its own title. And I wish we had more than 2 minutes.
Thank you, Ron. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Anybody else here to testify in favor? Going to the in favor line. Your last chance. All right. Opposition? Further opposition?
Good afternoon. I'm Jay Schroeder, President of Missouri Fraternal Order Police, and as the bill is written right now, we are in opposition of it for a couple reasons, and the one being the liability on the police departments. I know, Senator, you asked the question, what happens if a police department decides? Back when this passed the first time, every police department in the state of Missouri pulled all their policemen out of federal task forces because of the threat of a lawsuit. What it comes down to is you have to insure these police departments. And when you do this, they pulled all their money back, and they were like, we're not going to insure your policemen based on the fact that they can be sued for $50,000. It would bankrupt cities. So that is my testimony on that. I will stand for any questions.
Questions for this witness? Senator Shelton, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, thank you for being here. Were any departments from, I guess was it the fall of 2021 to fall of 2023, I think is when it was in effect, if I remember right. Were any
Correct.
departments sued during that time, to your knowledge?
No, most of the task force officers had been pulled out of. They weren't doing any gun cases. They were
Okay.
they were told that they could only work drug cases. So
Gotcha.
they
So
couldn't
there
go
were
out
no,
and do. Yeah, they
no
weren't
cases.
doing federal
Okay,
gun cases.
I was just curious. Thank you.
Senator Shore.
Briefly follow up to that, Jay. I know we've seen the website for STL, St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. During that time, I remember specifically, and I may have even sent to the sponsor pictures of some confiscations of guns. Was that in drug cases where they were making good on drug warrants?
Yes,
working with the feds.
If there was a drug case that had a drug nexus, and obviously guns are generally involved with drugs, but they would go in and do a drug bust. There would be guns there already. Then you would have those seizures, and sometimes they were involved with state law violations also.
So that the SAPA bill previously, between what'd you say, 2021, 23, they were still taking guns away from the bad guys that weren't supposed to have them to begin with. So this didn't impact working with the feds on other issues that weren't specifically tied to
Correct.
federal
Yes,
gun cases.
there were some guys that were still assigned. Most of the
Okay.
ATF people came out because and obviously the ATF is focused on guns. We did keep some people in DEA, but they were specifically told unless it has a drug nexus, you're not allowed to participate.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Jay. Anybody else here to testify in opposition?
Good afternoon. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I had about a 5-minute speech, but I'm going to cut it down because most of it's been covered. My name is Robert Shockey. I'm a retired police chief out of St. Louis area. 43 years on the job. I'm executive director of Missouri Police Chiefs Association. I'm here representing the Law Enforcement Legislation Committee. We just want to echo our concerns about the $50,000 mandatory fine and being able to work in task force. We had to pull, I was the chief during those years, and in Jefferson County, we had to pull, every municipality had to pull their people out of the task force because the insurance company said, we will not cover you. And we've been told that this will happen again if this bill passes the way it sits right now. So those are our two big concerns, and if you have any questions.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you for your testimony. Further opposition?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to be here to testify. My name is Christy Gase. I'm the sheriff in Douglas County. I'm also the president of the Missouri Sheriff's Constitutional Firearms Alliance that was just recently established. I had about a 5-minute speech also, condensed mine down. I'll mimic a lot of the same concerns that he has. Coming from a small department, obviously the $50,000 is one of the things that concerns us as a department. You know, an officer making an arrest or doing an investigation or good faith could end up costing a department $50,000. That would be detrimental to a department of my size. The second thing that we're concerned with is the venue. I mean, there's some talk in there about if these lawsuits will be taken up where the violation occurred or Cole County. And I think there's case law that already talks about that, you know, where venue is, and those venues should, in our opinion, remain where the violation occurred. I don't think we need to be shopping for a court in order to get these cases in front of. So those are the two big issues that we have with the Senate bill, and we are also going to be in support of Senate Bill 955. So that's the one that was written for us. So that's going to be the one that we're going to get behind. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Any further testimony in opposition? Please, just a reminder, fill out a witness form for our records. Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
No problem.
Good afternoon. Thanks for hearing my testimony today. My name is Kristen Bowen. I've been a resident of Columbia for over 2 decades, and I've been a volunteer since 2015 with the Missouri chapter of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. I'm testifying briefly today because Senate Bill 858 is a dangerous bill that undermines federal firearm regulation by prohibiting state and local officials from enforcing certain federal laws. It would create a patchwork of enforcement that endangers public safety. And I know time is short, so I'm going to cut to the chase. My experience in volunteering for Moms Demand Action and advocating for safety measures that are supported by evidence leads me to the bottom line. Senate Bill 858 will not reduce gun violence in Missouri. Instead, it would handcuff police officers in Missouri. I was in the hearing in this room with you all just this past April when this room was even more packed than it is today with law enforcement officials from rural, urban, and suburban communities, including Columbia, where I live. And we heard them loud and clear saying they did not want this bill, which they said was very much the same bill that we're hearing today. So sabotaging public safety partnerships makes Missouri a potential haven for illegal activity. I encourage you to vote no.
Any questions? Senator Weber, go ahead.
Briefly, Mr. Chair. First, I just want to thank you for being here. You're obviously a constituent, and I know that our community has faced a lot of gun violence recently.
Yes.
And I know I've talked to our police chief, Chief Schluty, personally, specifically about this bill, and she's told me that she's very concerned that this will make our community less safe. So I don't know if she could be here today, but I'm grateful that you were here and that you're speaking up, and just wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you, Senator Weber. I appreciate that because I too have been at community events, community forums, Columbia. I'm very concerned about the gun violence that affects mid-Missouri and have heard from our police leadership that they are following this very closely and are opposed. I wanted to say also, just really quickly, I attached some information about gun violence in Missouri, both what our laws look like, the rates of gun violence, and the financial costs of gun violence in Missouri to my testimony today.
Any other questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you
Appreciate
for being
it.
here.
Thank you.
Any further testimony in opposition to the bill? Anyone for informational purposes only? Seeing none, then I'll conclude the hearing. Senator, thank you. You have concluding remarks. You're welcome to
I just had
Really
a
quick.
couple quick. You know, I know Senator Weber brought up the potential for, you know, the non-enforcement because of misunderstanding of what this does. This law is crystal clear on what we can and can't do. They can enforce these laws. They can bring these criminals to justice. What we have are insurance companies knowingly misinterpreting what we write in law. They've done it with school protection officer, when little kids are being murdered in schools by active shooters, and they refuse to allow schools to do what's best to protect those students because of insurance companies. So if anything, let's not go after a law of protecting our Second Amendment right shall not be infringed by the federal government. Then you look at the 10th Amendment, which is what this is. It's a protection where if it's not prohibited unto the states, it's therefore granted to the states for, you know, how we're going to interpret, how we're going to enforce anything to infringe on a Second Amendment. So it's supposed to be left unto the states. But if anything, we need to be going after these insurance companies and their misinterpretation of the laws that we make. It's crystal clear, and it's unfortunate that we have these insurance companies that are dictating these terrible policies. And yes, people are dying, guns remain on the street, children die in schools because insurance companies make an erroneous interpretation of the laws we pass. That's what we need to be looking at, not at protecting our Second Amendment rights of our constituents and making sure they're not aiding and abetting illegal gun confiscations and infringements. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this hearing. I appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Senator. Seeing no further business before the committee, I make a motion to adjourn. Having a second, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. We're adjourned.